Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to compliment my colleague from South Dakota for his commitment and continuing focus on jobs and the economy and the impact that that has on our nation and our future. I come, as I have week after week, with a doctor's second opinion about the health care law, which is in many ways directly tied to the economy and the economic situation that my colleague from South Dakota was commenting on. We have seen continual unemployment of over 8%, now 8.2% unemployment. People graduating from colleges who can't find work, who are going back to live with their parents, and that's because the president focused on a health care law, and the Supreme Court will rule on it tomorrow, but he focused on that instead of focusing on what people at home were concerned about: jobs, the economy, getting the economy moving again, bringing the economy back to health. A healthy economy is what people were looking for. So I come to the floor today, Madam President, to talk a bit about things that have happened since the health care law was passed, because President Obama and Democrats repeatedly promised that the health care law would do several things. One, they said it would make health insurance more affordable, and they also said it would help create jobs for millions of Americans. Millions of Americans, they said. In fact, after the Senate completed passage of the health care law, the majority leader, Senator Reid, said, quote, "This, of course," he said, "was a health bill." He went on. He said it was also a jobs bill. He went on. He said it was also an economic recovery bill. He said it was a deficit reduction bill. He said it was an anti-discrimination bill. He said it was truly a Bill of Rights. And he went on to say, and now he said it is the law of the land. An economic recovery bill, he said, a jobs bill, he said. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi added, it's about jobs, she said. She said in its life, health care reform would create, she said, 4 million jobs, 400,000 jobs almost immediately. Well, Madam President, that's not happened. It's not happened. Another broken promise to the American people. And that's why I've come to the floor week after week to point out issues with this health care law, which I continue to believe is bad for patients, bad for the providers, the nurses, and the doctors who take care of those patients, and terrible for taxpayers. And Madam President, one of the key components of the health care law that the President promised would help create jobs was what he referred to as the small employer health insurance tax credit. Back in April of 2010, the President said, quote, "This health care tax credit is pro-jobs, it's pro-business," and he said, and it starts this year. Well, in essence, the credit was supposed to offset the cost of health insurance for small businesses so that they could provide insurance to their employees. The President's Council on Economic Advisors made some estimates. They estimated that about 4 million small businesses, they said, would be eligible for the credit. The administration was so proud of the initiative that they sent out millions of postcards to small businesses. Now, I believe they actually never read it, didn't understand how it worked, because Susan Collins, senator from Maine, stood on the floor of the Senate and said, hey, look how it really works. It's not going to work the way you have described it. But no, this administration that knows better than anyone, they were so proud of the initiative, they sent out millions of postcards, and according to the IRS, 4.4 million postcards were sent out. Who paid for it? The taxpayers. Remember them? Those are people at home where only 1 in 3 of them think the country's heading in the right direction, and so many of them believe that their tax dollars that they send to Washington are not being used well. Well, White House ignored them and urged small businesses to look at the tax credit criteria and to take advantage, they said, of the credit that would be available. So what has been the response across the country of the small businesses, the over 4 million that received the postcards saying, hey, look what we're doing for you? Well, according to the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office, only about 170,000, actually 170,300 employers were able to claim the credit. Not 4 million, oh no. And of these 4 million that got the postcards, how many were able to take full advantage of the credit? Only 28,000. In other words, the credit only benefited about 4% of the businesses that the President promised to help. 96% of the businesses that the President promised to help got nothing. Only 4% of the businesses were able to benefit at all, and even a smaller number than that were able to take full advantage. Well, the Wall Street Journal analyzed this issue in a recent article. The article featured Michael Griffin, the owner of a small advertising agency in St. Louis, Missouri. Michael had this to say about the tax credit that the president promised and held up as some wonderful thing that he was doing. He said, quote, "You're penalized for giving people a higher wage and more professional opportunity." Is that what the Democrats believe, that we should penalize businesses for giving people a higher wage and more professional opportunity? Well, Michael went on to say, "I appreciate any kind of tax reduction, but I can certainly not applaud a reduction that limits growth and the opportunity for employers to pay more to their employees." But that's exactly what this tax credit did. It reduces it limits the growth of a company, and it limits the opportunities for employers to pay more to their employees. Now, Mr. Griffin is not the only small business owner who's had problems with this tax credit, this big promise by the president. Jeffrey Birdall, an accountant from Allentown, Pennsylvania, spoke to the Associated Press about this very issue. He described the calculations required for the tax credit as mind-numbing. You know, people pass laws here. I wonder if they read them, they understand the implications. I believe that they don't. He described what this Congress passed, what the president touts, as mind-numbing, and also pointed out that for many of his clients, this accountant's clients, he said the money they received from the tax credit was offset by the money that they had to pay their accountants to just try to figure out if they could receive any of these credits. In the same AP article, Terry Gutierrez from Raleigh, North Carolina, stated that in some cases, he said, the tax credit is more hassle than it's worth. More hassle than it's worth. And the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, confirmed that these experiences in their report. They found many small businesses are deterred from claiming the credit. Why? Because like so much that has come out as part of this health care law, it is just so complex. The report highlighted the fact that it requires 15 separate calculations. Okay, so the president sends out a postcard, 4.4 million people paid for by the taxpayers to say, hey, you may get a tax credit. 96% of the people that get the postcard end up with nothing. Why? Did anybody look at this? 15 separate calculations, 7 separate worksheets just to calculate the amount of the credit. The GAO was told by tax preparers that it would take their clients anywhere from 2 to 8 hours, or possibly longer, just to gather in the necessary information to just start to calculate the credit. On top of this, they found that tax preparers spent, in general, 3 to 5 hours calculating the credit. This from a postcard from the president that says you're going to do things for you? This is not the kind of help from Washington that small businesses are looking for, or want, or deserve. The American people deserve better. So for all of this trouble, GAO determined that the average amount claimed per small business across the country, less than $3,000. $2,700. Average amount claimed. It's clear that this policy is just another broken promise of the president's health care law. Since the president recently said that the private sector is doing fine, we can remember him. You've seen him from the White House giving a speech saying the private sector is doing fine. The ineffectiveness of his small business tax credits may not bother him one bit, but it does bother most Americans. And as I speak with my neighbors across Wyoming, I know that the truth of their lives is very much different than what the president may believe. Many Americans are also concerned about the fact that bureaucrats at the Internal Revenue Service seem to benefit the most from the tax provisions in the law. According to the Inspector General for Tax Administration, the IRS will need nearly 1,300 new federal employees in 2012 to implement the president's health care law. That's what they're asking for. 1,300 new federal employees for the IRS. In a report issued on June 14th of this year, just a week or two ago, the Inspector General pointed that enforcing the small business health insurance tax credit, said, is one of the reasons why the agency must expand. They need 1,300 new federal employees so they can put forward and deal with this so-called tax credit that only 4% of the people that the president said would help have actually received any credit, and the amount that they've received so very low that for most of them it wasn't worth even doing the paperwork. While the president and Washington Democrats may believe that adding employees to the IRS is the key to job creation, I respectfully disagree. The private sector is not fine, and the government doesn't need to get any bigger. This is why I have fought and will continue to fight to replace the president's health care law with real reforms that will improve competition, increase consumer choice, and lower the cost of care for all Americans. I mean, that's what this was all supposed to be about in the first place. Patient-centered care, giving people the care that they need from a doctor that they choose, not that the government chooses, not that the insurance company chooses, but that they choose at lower cost. And that, Madam President, is why I come to the floor week after week with a doctor's second opinion about a health care law at a time that I still believe that this health care law that the Supreme Court will rule on tomorrow is one that is bad for patients, bad for providers, the nurses and doctors who take care of those patients, and is terrible for our taxpayers. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.